Hi, Achim here from InnerSpace Explorers. Still
Hi,
in
Juan.
Egypt, still with Juan. And today's topic is wreck conservation. And the reason we're going to talk about this is a couple of things we experienced during this trip. A couple of wrecks we dove, started to talk a little bit about it, and figured it's a good topic for a video. Before we get into that, if you like my channel, hit the like button, subscribe, and now let's talk a little bit about wreck conservation. So the reason, as I just said, is wrecks we dove in the past week. It started actually when we've been on Sisselgorm. I've been diving the wreck over the last 15, 20 years, over and over and over again. And it was pretty rough to see how it deteriorated, and not only from all the people that ripped off stuff from the motorcycles and the trucks and the wreck and so on, but also the way that a wreck that's considered World Cultural Heritage is treated in general. Like, for example, the boats tied to the wreck, so you see one pull to the right, one to the left. It looks almost like they tried to break it open like a nutshell, which made us wonder a little bit why you do not, for example, put some fat concrete blocks next to it where you can anchor some pulley stones or something like that. Why on the wreck, which for sure adds further damage to something that on one side should be protected because it is cultural heritage, and on the other side is a money-making machine for this country. So watching that makes you wonder and a little bit sad. And then today actually we've been at Southern Express, and I never dove the wreck. I always said, I think for me personally, this is wrong, and today I was like, maybe I'm wrong, and I'll just give it a shot and have a look myself, and see if that's probably totally different. And the end result is that I think I was right all these years, and I know this will create a shitstorm. But you said you're gonna burn with me.
Yeah, we burn.
So that brings in another aspect of the conservation, because for those of you who don't know the wreck, you can Google it. Salem Express sank in 1991. It's a ferry full of pilgrims that sank in front of Safaga with a lot of fatalities. Official reports say something like 560, but most probably more close to 1,000. And so as it was religious people, and they were coming from Mecca, and the government of Saudi Arabia asked, like, can you protect that as a gravesite? And the government said, yeah, we're going to do it, and now it's a touristic dive site. And I always had a bit mixed feelings with that, and that's why I personally never dove it. And so this discussion got a bit deeper, and we wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that, when you think about the value of wreck all over the world. And, I mean, truth be told, who doesn't want to go into a wreck and kind of relive the past that it had?
Yeah,
right?
It's a time capsule.
Yeah, it is a time capsule. It's an in situ museum, right? So it's quite it quite has a lot to offer. And having said that, both historically, scientifically, and again culturally, like you said, in terms of heritage, there's a lot that should be done to preserve these timepieces that, in all honesty, are breaking over time anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
So
and,
as long as possible.
As long as possible, yes, absolutely. So what would be really ideal is to get some sort of conservation going in order to classify wrecks, for example, as things that can be used for tourism, and maybe classify some for scientific purposes if necessary, or historical purposes for whatever reason, right? But at the end of the day, I think it is in order so that we can definitely preserve them for as long as we can.
Yeah.
Okay?
And then even if you have things that you see falling apart, or where you say this is worth preserving for future generations forever, so to speak, you can still take it out officially, preserve it, and put it in a museum or on display. Like, for me, a good example, and I know this was discussed, very controversial as well, was the Titanic.
Yes.
So when the Titanic was found, and I mean, it's the most famous wreck in the world for sure, and we know that breaks down rapidly because of this special bacteria. And then they started to recover things, and there's this exhibition that's traveling around the world. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've heard of it. Yeah,
I've seen it in London, I've seen it in Hamburg, and for me it was extremely impressive. And I also want to show it to my children. And the only way of having this or keeping this history alive and being able to show that to people along with the tragedy is probably this exhibition, because I mean nobody is going to dive it, and then probably 50 years from now the wreck's gone, so yeah, that's probably the way to go. But it's not these bits and pieces taken by several people and now hanging in private garages and half of it being thrown away because they couldn't preserve it. So that, in my opinion, is the right way of doing it. And if for those of you who've seen the exhibition, it's very respectful. And if I would have had relatives, family members that would have passed away in this disaster, I would feel very comfortable with the way it is presented. Also personal items that have been on display. So that's a great way of doing it. But again, a very I know very controversial, and we just talked about it before. I think there's also the religious part that you have to take into account for Christians, for example. I think, me being one, not really religious, but I think we are very liberal with these things. So, I mean, I can take a walk on a cemetery in Munich, on an old one, and enjoy the beauty of the scenery. But obviously, I'm not stealing flowers and digging for gold teeth. Yeah, it's how do you approach it. But I know that other cultures have a total different feeling about their past family members, and they probably do not feel comfortable with that. So I think it's a matter of the divers to respect these mixed cultural conditions.
Yeah, and you have also, of course, this big factor that plays into the deterioration of wrecks, or the pieces that are in them, is the human factor.
Yeah.
And I think this one is definitely something where we can help. You know, if we are just more responsible in terms of how we visit these sites, perhaps we can change things.
Yeah, which then again brings up the educational aspect.
Yeah, sure.
So that starts with skills of how do you go through a wreck like that without disturbing it because your skills are bad, and at the same time being educated of what you have. We've seen that today. I mean, most people had no idea about the history of this.
Yeah. But we do it for reefs. You know, you have things like green fins, for example, and they say don't touch, don't do this, don't do this. Why not do it for wrecks?
True.
Why not, right? The human factor also goes to show, like, things, for example, that are brought into the wreck that can damage the wreck. You mentioned the Titanic, and what I remember from what I've seen in documentaries is that they take these submarines and actually land it on the hull.
Yeah.
Every time they land it on the hull, things have a big impact, right?
Yeah, completely. So I think there's a lot of different points to be considered, but it needs to be started. So I think it's more the awareness that needs to be created amongst governments, tour operators, and divers. And when I talk divers, obviously the agencies. So everybody's now talking about conservation and green projects and preserving reefs and our
and no
biosphere, but why not do the same thing for the wrecks?
For the wrecks, exactly that. And I mean, of course, the question will also come down to policing it. Right? How do you police something that's underwater?
Yeah.
Right, and that also comes from tour operators. They have to also be proactive in protecting these sites.
Yeah, true. On the other hand, there is areas like, for example, the Florida Keys that did that decades ago, where, I mean, if you violate the rules, you get banned from diving there.
Yeah.
And actually can have quite high fees, penalties. And then, I mean, the question is, and that brings us back to the initial two wrecks, like today, the Salem. I mean, does every wreck have to be a touristic place? I mean, we have probably another 100 wrecks around the one that we dove today. So it wouldn't hurt anybody if this one would have been blocked off and instead you open up another one. So
Yeah.
we know that there's plenty of wrecks in the area that are simply not open for diving for whatever reason. So they're probably more clever decisions. So yeah, let's open this and let's close this and problem
Yeah,
solved.
yeah,
I mean,
sure.
because for the diver that wants, because I heard a lot of people on this trip say today that was an impressive wreck, but I'm sure there's more impressive wrecks that were cargo ships that sank probably without the loss of life, that you can dive and that are still impressive.
Yeah.
And you can penetrate them as much as you want because there's nothing in it that would hurt anybody if you touch it, if you move it, if it gets destroyed, whatever.
Yes, I agree completely. It also doesn't hurt to think that, for example, in 2045, right, UNESCO is going to declare most warships for World War II as cultural heritage. So
Good point.
these are definitely going to be protected by member states or member countries, right? So that's a good thing, but why do we have to wait until then? Because by that time, maybe we'd have less of them.
Very true. And then the big question is obviously what does it mean? Does it mean they're not accessible anymore, or are there certain rules when you want to? So that's something that I'm really looking forward to see, because what does it mean for us as divers? Because I mean, sitting here and saying you need to do something in wreck conservation doesn't mean that we do not want people to dive these wrecks. We are wreck divers, we love to dive wrecks, but at the same time I see a lot of problems for us as wreck divers created by this careless way of handling the topic.
Yeah,
So to
careless
speak.
way. That again, I keep on thinking about human impact because they are touristic sites.
Yeah.
You have a lot of a whole range of diver certifications that go into these places that offer wreck diving, and there's just a lot of harm that they do to the wreck when they don't really know how to properly view them or properly present
Which
them.
brings us back to improper education.
Yes. Yes.
I see.
And the lack of respect for the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, cool. So I know it's a controversial topic, and I want you guys to let us know what you think in the comment section. I'm really looking forward to this. So that's probably one where we will answer outside from the Patreon. So Juan will probably be also able to answer a few of your questions, remarks, whatever. Let us know. I'm really looking forward to this. Other than that, enjoy wreck diving, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.